I'd like to welcome everyone to our meeting tonight for the regular meeting of the Board of Education for Langley School District. And it's Tuesday, April 19th, 2022. And I've got a number of guests that we want to acknowledge today. So from our partner groups, we have, oh goodness, they're so good looking. And first of all, we've got Human Anasori from Kupi, 1851 president, thank you. Tanya Kerr, LTA president as well. And then I've got Ellen Bornowski, LTA vice president. And then all the way down to Jeremy Linden, and he is with the LVPPA president. And beside him, we have Kim Anderson as well, the LPVPA vice president. And thank you very much for coming today, folks. On our staff, we have a number of people. Oh, did I mention Jennifer? No. Oh, Jennifer, don't be hurt. Okay, Jennifer Johnson, QP 1260 president. Thank you very much. I specifically wanted to get you in there, and look what happened. Anyway, a number of staff are also present tonight. I'd like to recognize that Vince Montefrio, as a technical support specialist 1, is here tonight. Dale Vo is a technical support specialist 3. Paul Bobeo is a technical support specialist number 1. Judy Swanson is our executive assistant this evening. Along with her is Joanne Abshar, our communications manager. Shin Chan, the assistant secretary treasurer. Lisa Lanchbury, the assistant superintendent. Marcello Moino, assistant superintendent. Barry Bunyan, assistant superintendent. And tonight we have Woody Bradford, our deputy superintendent, who is joining us, along with Brian Azelli, and he is our secretary treasurer, along with our superintendent Mel Gill. Our trustees that are with us tonight, our youngest trustee is Mr. Charlie Fox, and along with him is Marty Wilson and Tony Ward, and then we have Suzanne Perot, Sheldon Coburn at the end, on the far right, and David Todd, and myself, Board Chair Rod Ross. Thank you very much. Tonight, the audio-visual recording of our regular board meeting. Those in attendance were informed that as per policy number 7, regular and special meetings of the board may be streamed live, archived, or accessed online. The board reserves as its sole discretion via motion at any meeting the right to not stream live or archive a meeting or a portion of a meeting. Further, the board reserves the right to edit any recorded portion of a meeting. I'd like to call the meeting to order tonight at 7:02 p.m. and begin the meeting with the introduction. I'd like to acknowledge that the Langley School District is located on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, Semiahmoo First Nations. We gather here tonight in an understanding of the importance of Yayastal, Skekiayos, working together, and Netsamot, united ourselves one mind, one heart, to ensure that we support and inspire our learners to reach their full potential. So I'd like to welcome everyone here tonight. First of all, we have our report from in camera, and I'd like to have our vice chair report out at this time. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. I'd like to report that the special in-camera meeting of March 8th, 2022, we discussed property, and at tonight's in-camera, we discussed personnel, property, and
Thank you very much for that. On to the consent agenda, that the Board of Education adopts the consent agenda as provided. I need a mover for this as well as a seconder. Moved by David Todd, seconded by Ms. Suzanne Perot. Thank you very much. And all those in favor of accepting this tonight. Thank you very much. It is carried unanimously. Now we have a couple of a little swap in our agenda tonight, and we need to swap 7.3 and 7.4. We're just going to reverse the order on that. So can I have a mover for that, for the agenda as amended? Okay, Charlie Fox, and also seconded by Suzanne Perot. Thank you, trustees. For the agenda be approved as presented, all those in favor, please. And it is also carried unanimously. Thank you very much. And we have a delegation tonight, a day of mourning for workers killed and injured. So presenting on behalf of the New Westminster and Labour Council will be Tanya Kerr, President of the Langley Teachers Association. Would you like to come forward at this time?
Hello, good evening. My name is Tanya Kerr and I'm a delegate of the New Westminster and District Labour Council and a member of the BC Teachers Federation. Each year the New Westminster and District Labour Council presents to 14 city councils and 7 school boards within our region to seek their support and recognition of April 28th as the day of mourning for workers killed and injured on the job. Our presentations are usually designed to be informative with a theme or focus, as we believe workplace health and safety is everyone's responsibility. But in the last few years, our presentations have changed. Most notably, this year marks our 3rd day of mourning since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the past, many thought of safety in the workplace as only involving machinery, vehicles, or maybe chemicals of protection, including steel-toed boots, ears, eye, breathing, and fall protections. The labor movement made hard-fought gains on improving to legislation like the very important West Tray amendments to the Criminal Code of Canada and to ensuring workers had appropriate coverage and compensation under WorkSafe BC. Both of these are critical to ensure workers continue to be safe at work and to provide redress in case of negligence on part of the employer and supervisors. When the COVID-19 pandemic hit in 2020, we were not able to make these presentations to you. Last year, our focus was on sharing and emphasizing the importance of pandemic precautions that were keeping our frontline workers safe, like masks, hand washing, physical distancing, and vaccination. In the media and in our communities, we also saw a widespread understanding of what workers have always known. Good health is not just physical, it's mental and emotional. Safety is not just about tools and gear, it's about attitudes, awareness, workplace cultures, shared responsibility, and commitment. This day of mourning, we are here to take this opportunity to reinforce these understandings so they don't fall out of the headlines as the pandemic passes and life returns to normal. We are here to say, going forward, normal cannot include preventable injuries and death at work. Our purpose in recognizing the day of mourning has always been twofold: to remember workers killed and injured on the job, and to rededicate ourselves to preventing further injuries through education. This year, we are adding a 3rd priority that speaks to this new widespread understanding of health and safety, which echoes the campaign of the Canadian Labour Congress, Work Shouldn't Hurt. 3 years ago, the International Labour Organization, ILO, agreed it would recognize occupational health and safety as a fundamental right at work, but this was never implemented. In the time since, the pandemic has exposed a lack of protection for workers, and around 8.1 million people worldwide have died as a result of their work, and many more now live with life-altering injuries and illness. Working people can't wait. We know workplace deaths are preventable deaths, and behind all these such statistics are members of our communities. They are our family, our friends, and our neighbors. This campaign, Work Shouldn't Hurt, calls on the Canadian government to take a leadership role internationally to get the ILO Convention on Workplace Safety as a fundamental right passed this year. So why does this matter? During the pandemic, we saw workers having to fight for access to protective equipment, for COVID-safe practices at work, for paid sick leave, and for respect for their right to be healthy and safe at work. It is our hope that by making safety at work fundamental right, workers will not be burdened by these fights in the future. Throughout the pandemic, workers in every industry and sector in the economy proved that they were willing and able to respond to keep our communities safe, keep them supplied, keep them going, to do what was necessary to get to where we are now. We don't think that recognizing workers should be safe at work and protected from preventable injury and death is too much to ask in return. There can be no economic argument that stands against the lives and health of working people and the impacts on their families. As working people, we view the right to be safe at work as important as freedom of association and elimination of forced labor, child labor, and discrimination in employment. We ask that you support our call for senior levels of government to lead on making the right to safe workplace the standard, both here and around the world. Everyone here today can help us make a difference. As elected local leaders, you can help join us in the call for employers in our community to take responsibility for assessing and eradicating hazards in their workplace and in their supply chains. Workers stand ready to participate in the prevention through workplace health and safety committees. Together we can and should lead the way for workers, their family, and our community. It is leadership that is key when it comes to health and safety in the workplace. Strong leadership can show the way, set the example, and ensure we are all working together. This is especially important for young workers who are at higher risk in their workplace, as they're often unaware of their rights, like the right to refuse unsafe work, and may not feel comfortable to speak up when they have questions and concerns. Leadership, awareness, and education are the keys to ensure safer, healthier workspaces. I would like to conclude by inviting you to join our Labour Council this day of mourning for workers killed and injured on the job for an in-person observance on Thursday, April 28th at 11 a.m. at Westminster Pier Park in New Westminster. Links to the event are on the Labour Council website and Facebook pages. Everyone here today can help us make a difference, be safety conscious, support accountability measures, and health and safety education in your workplaces. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kerr. We appreciate you very much. And I think there's a motion that's going to come out of this. Go ahead. Sorry, one more time.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was great. To further increase awareness of the International Day of Mourning for workers killed and injured next week on April 28th, I move a motion that we observe a moment of silence. Can I have a seconder?
All those in favor? So we'll have a moment of silence now. So thank you for the delegation again. Thank you for your motion as well. We're at number 7, and the superintendent's report. First of all, 7.1 is our COVID-19 update. So would the superintendent like to share?
Thank you, Chair Ross. I secretly hope that this is my last COVID-19 update. Of course, we've been disappointed before, and we continue to do our very best to deal with this pandemic. And the district has done an amazing job. Again, the presentation on health and safety in support of our workers and the team approach that we've had together has made a huge difference in the district. And again, accommodation to all of our staff who have been amazing through this process. So Dr. Henry made the announcement not too long ago that things were changing in the province yet again, and at this time it seems that we're moving in a different direction. Rather than tightening things up, we're at a place where things are starting to loosen up a little as far as the guidelines are concerned. Comes as great timing for our students and our staff, because much work has been done in the past short while around theater presentations and students who've been doing a lot of work around their athletics, and for parents who have sat at home quietly hoping that this moment would come where they'd have the opportunity to be a part of the audience. And this has been a fantastic opportunity for our parents to be able to get there. The other piece that I think has been amazing for our administrators, our staff, and certainly our students is the opportunity just to gather together in assemblies. The culture in our buildings depends really on the opportunity to build community, and having that opportunity to have everybody in the same place at the same time, whether it be just as a quick assembly, just to go over the expectations, or rather to have some joy in your day around artistic presentations or other presentations, has been an amazing change. I know that I've heard in the secondary schools we've had pep rallies again. So those have been actually great impacts on the wellness of the whole entire community. And again, the impact of COVID has not just been physical, as we know. The impact of COVID has certainly been impacted the wellness of everybody in the system. The other piece around extracurricular, I've chatted a little bit about that already, and the opportunity now to have schools from all over the province obviously play one another has been an opportunity for our kids to really showcase who they are as far as athletics are concerned. And I think they look forward to moving on in their career and doing more with that. Again, talked about spectators, the timing around having the guidelines lifted to the place where we can have visitors in our schools, watching the plays and the musicals and the bands and the choirs has been welcomed by all. And I know that certainly there's been a buzz in the building. Again, not having to be for our staff, having to be the people having to check, whether somebody's vaccinated or not vaccinated, has certainly been a welcome for our staff as well, because it's hard enough to deal with COVID. As the additional step of having to police would be exhausting for sure. And we continue to allow visitors into the building, not just for specialized events, but certainly for other events. So big deal from Deepak, certainly when we were able to announce that hot lunches were back for kids. We may say, oh, it's a little thing for kids. It's actually not just a little thing. It's a huge deal for kids when they get that hot lunch served by parents. It makes a big difference in their lives. So certainly a great opportunity. I think I just want to say that, again, I mentioned it at the beginning of the presentation. I believe the district is poised to and I hate to use the word, but pivot, should it be necessary. But certainly we've been well prepared, and I think that just is a testimony to our staff, their ability to really work with one another, collaborate, and make changes on the fly. That's all staff, and certainly whether it's the classrooms being cleaned and the extra little bit being done, our SEAs working closely with our students, minding their own safety as well. Our teaching staff who have been able to work, in schools or work remotely with their students, to be flexible with the schedules that we've had to change to. They've done an amazing job as a staff, and I can't say enough about our leadership group. Our principals and vice principals certainly done an amazing job as well. So, and we keep hearing about different things, and the latest piece, as you turn the TV on and check the news, is there another wave coming? You hear about what's happening around the world, and I'm hoping that we're poised in British Columbia in a place where we're not facing that next wave. But again, we have to be realistic and to be prepared, and I know that we continue to work at ensuring that our students and staff are safe in the buildings. And as we've started all the way through this process, the PHO, the work of Fraser Health has been awesome. We followed their lead through this. We are not the experts, and we continue to take their leadership and their direction. As far as student attendance is concerned, we still monitor our student attendance daily, and that's thanks to our folks in IT and our assistant superintendent and Maggie Gabriel, our district principal, who checks it daily. We haven't pushed the threshold yet, the threshold being 10% greater than the historical norms for the same month since March break. So it's been, fingers crossed, it's been good news so far. The other thing we've been monitoring, and it's information that we share with the ministry, it's information that we've kept up to date with through HR, is our staff. Currently we've had, we've been in a good place as far as the number of staff that have been away ill, but we continue to monitor the situation. I'm just going to show you a quick graph that kind of gives you an indication of where we were. As you'll notice in January, especially in that third week of January, we were up quite high as far as those numbers were concerned, but we've been leveling off, coming downwards steadily, and then you'll notice the flat line where spring break is, and then moving right back up again, and right to about, you know, some higher numbers 2 weeks after spring break. Obviously, there's a reason for that as well. So, but we continue to monitor. We're watching. Should there be any concerns, we'll share that information, not just shared with us as a district team, but we also share that with Fraser Health, and again, continuing to take our direction from them. So that's my COVID report, and like I said, hopefully one of our last ones.
Thank you very much, Superintendent. Your graph looks like my stocks, but I imagine trustees have a few comments, so I see a speakers list started up here. David Todd, would you like to respond first? Do you have a question for the superintendent?
So thank you very much. Thank you for your report. I did have several questions during spring break and around the much anticipated sixth possible wave. I have two, and one of them you're kind of referring to the fact that, of course, staff illness has come up 2 weeks, which is kind of the period timeline since spring break, and then it's come up and there is a little bit of a blip. So that's something to be aware of, and I know I have received correspondence that, you know, people are concerned, is masking going to come back, or people that are wearing masks feel sometimes there's a lack of support, perhaps, you know, when they are choosing to mask at schools. So a question around how we're handling that particular thing, and as well, and this is more a personal question, but I think it's a bigger question too. Physical activity has pretty much just gone and basically gone down to very little in schools, and I think it was an organization that came out recently that said that physical activity of many of our youth has just cratered, and it's down as much as 20 to 30% in terms of like fitness levels. And I know it's early, but is there anything we're going to do to address that?
So I'll start with the mask question. Certainly the issue around masks, as far as what we're going to be doing as a district, I think I outlined the fact that we continue to do the work around following the direction of the PHO and Fraser Health, and we'll continue to do that. I think when we try to kind of bridge out on our own, and we're not the scientists and we're not the doctors, and we tend to, I think, maybe head in places that we're not actually trained to be in. And I think it's best that we follow that direction. And we've actually done quite well as far as a district in that we've been able to, you know, keep our schools open, keep our kids in schools. Having said that, I think when you talk about masks in schools, I'd hope that folks wouldn't feel uncomfortable wearing masks or uncomfortable not wearing masks in schools. It's a personal choice. And initially, when we got to the place where we were going to, this announcement came about, it was very clear in our messaging to our schools, to our administrators, is that people will have that personal choice. And we wanted to grant that personally, and people are feeling awkward in any way, they should certainly let the leadership in the building know, and we certainly do the work necessary to support. The piece around physical fitness, certainly up to grade 10 is something we have the capacity to do as far as physical activities. The other piece is the extracurricular, where we have, again, an opportunity to start things up again. We want to continue the work that we do around supporting our coaches, because they're the ones who really we want to get enthused about and jazzed up about getting folks back into the gym again. And again, I think you know, DPA at the elementary level, we're ensuring that, again, that's happening more regularly, especially in our K-5, K-7 schools. So making that work as well. And we'll continue to keep doing that work as best we can. In addition, and thank you, we have invested over the last little while $200,000 just in our extracurricular, just to ensure that our schools are equipped with the equipment necessary so we can continue to do that work down the road as well. So thank you for the question. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Superintendent. Do trustees, any other trustee questions at this point for the superintendent? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Suzanne Coburn. Suzanne.
Thank you, Chair Ross. I just wanted to make a comment, not a question. I wanted to acknowledge that I definitely see our students out and about. I do a lot of walking throughout township as well as city on a daily basis. It's my mental health piece that I start off with every morning. And I see our educators out with our students doing walks with students with their classrooms, doing their learning outdoors, and that becomes part of that physical activity piece. So I just wanted to really acknowledge that because it's an important part of what we're doing right now towards our wellness and supporting both staff and students in those conversations.
Thank you very much. And I think I'm only at 3,000 steps today, so I'm not at all where you guys are. So I think probably we should get everyone to have a Fitbit or something like that. Maybe there might be something on. Okay. No other questions at this point? All right, so I'll call the question. It's been moved and seconded. Oh, actually, it hasn't been moved and seconded. I'm sorry. Can I get a mover for tonight's COVID update, please? Go ahead, Suzanne Perot, and also from Marnie Wilson. And the Board of Education receives the COVID-19 update for information as presented. All those in favor? And it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. On to 7.2, the Early Learning Year 3 update. The Board of Education receives the report on early learning. Let's hear that from the superintendent, is it?
Yeah, I'm excited this evening to introduce Assistant Superintendent Lisa Lanchberry and District Principal Kim Anderson, who will be doing this report. I think the amount of work that's been done in this area in our district is over the last few years has been amazing, and tonight's an opportunity for both of them to share the work that they've done and the work that they've supported in our schools. And I'm excited to hear the report. I know that the work that we do to support our families, to prepare them to come to school, it begins well before they enter school. And I'd like to thank both of you for your work, and excited to hear your presentation this evening.
Superintendent Gill, it's a pleasure to be here this evening and share with you the Year 3 update of the early learning goal in action within our strategic plan. With all children and families in mind, the district strives to bring our early learning vision to life. That is a learning community that inspires curiosity, discovery, and belonging, and honors all children and how they naturally learn. I'm here with my colleague, Ms. Kim Anderson, as Superintendent Gill says, Acting District Principal of Learning Support Services, to share our progress with you. Together, as part of our commitment to truth and reconciliation, we are working to nurture the gifts of all learners, and we do so on the unceded ancestral and traditional territories of the Matsqui, Kwantlen, Katzie, and Semiahmoo First Nations. And we believe that every child matters, and we believe that every child is unique. And as the Ministry of Education Early Learning Framework states, that all children should be welcomed and empowered to pursue their gifts. The district goal is to develop and implement an early learning plan to assist with transition into kindergarten and seamlessly through to grade 4. And the reason for this age range is the early learning framework encompasses children from birth to age 8. Our first action is to support collaborative teams within schools in response to student learning needs and student learning interests and needs. And we do this as a team to support the social emotional learning foundation that we start with in schools, to support strong inclusive instructional practice, and to support systems and structures through the lens of response to intervention. And we do this because we want to do the work of ensouling our schools, to create compassionate and inclusive social and academic learning communities that provide access for every learner. We know that children and families have different experiences, backgrounds, and vulnerabilities. We strive to learn about their gifts, their needs, and provide a supportive pre-K learning environment and a seamless transition into kindergarten. The Early Learning Framework was developed in consultation with the BC Aboriginal Childcare Society, the First Nations Education Steering Committee, and Métis Nation BC. Both the First Peoples Principles and the Early Learning Principles guide us and ground us in our work. To highlight a few, children are strong, capable in their uniqueness and full of potential. People build connection and reconnection to land, culture, community, and place. Learning is holistic. You can see that the First Peoples Principles of learning are embedded in our early learning principles, and so we refer to both in our work as early learning educators. The first principle, that children are strong and capable in their and full of potential, is mirrored in our district purpose: to inspire all learners to reach their full potential and create a positive legacy for the future. And we turn to Richard Dufour's 4 critical questions of professional learning community to guide us in our work. What do we expect all children, all students to learn? How will we know they have learned it? How will we respond to the students who do not learn? And how do we respond to the students who have already learned it? We acknowledge the different learning needs, create intentional learning opportunities, and create the conditions where all learners can flourish. And this work is done with teamwork. Together as a team to do that important work with those social emotional learning foundations, instructional practice, and systems and structures. And we do so with professional learning communities, with our Strong Start facilitators, resource and classroom teachers, SEAs, administrators, district staff. Together, we share our collective wisdom, our shared ownership, and we keep each other accountable. And our team extends beyond that of colleagues. Our homeschool relationship is key in our partnership as we work together to nurture our children. In our first and ongoing connections through online communication or in-person meetings, welcoming information sharing is key. We strive to keep families informed in a welcoming way so that we can build the foundation of team. Through our website, we share the guides for families, Let's Play activities, so that they can bring the early learning framework into their home and enjoy those activities with their children. And of course, we have our pre-K programs that extend welcoming opportunities for children and their families. Our Strong Start sessions that are available 9 per day across the district, Gifts and Gatherings, which is a hub and spokes model from the Welcome Center that's taking place at schools across the district, which is copied from the Ready, Set, Learn model. The Welcome Center itself at DGRE, where programming such as Storytime and Come As You Are is in place, and iPals, which took place at Douglas Park in the fall. So I'm going to pass it on to Kim, who's going to share a little bit more about our learning opportunities and for our families.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Lynchbury. Our early learning vision guides our work to support all early learners, with care paid to supporting the transitions for our children in care and our children with diverse abilities. Just this past month, we held our K Welcome Evening to help parents successfully navigate the transition into kindergarten. For many families, this was their first contact with the formal education system, and we recognize the importance that parents play as the biggest contributors to students' well-being and learning. The transition process can be daunting, and we want parents to know who to connect with, which information is important for transitions, how to access the necessary supports, and to foster the relationships necessary to help engage student learning, navigate successful transitions, nurture their growth, and inspire their learning. For many families, we know that this can be tough. Transition meetings are currently being held and will be held for the next few months for our families with our school teams. These meetings are a necessary part and a welcome addition to the planning process as we welcome our students into kindergarten. We recognize the importance of having parent and family voices in those meetings and a chance to formulate and foster those relationships as we welcome them into our schools. We also recognize the importance of our K Welcome evenings and our K Welcome events, and our schools are really excited this year to be able to have those in person. We are currently hosting those K-Welcome events where we welcome our students into the schools, invite them to explore spaces and engage in meaningful activities that really introduce them to the kindergarten experience. We are so very grateful for the relationships we have with Supported Child Development, the Early Learning Network, and Inclusion Langley, and we recognize the importance of these relationships in the successful transitions of our students. We also understand that these community partnerships have rich relationships existing already with families, and we want to nurture those relationships and create a larger school community for our families as they move forward. Part of our work in supporting early learners is helping to create inclusive and compassionate classrooms where we support the whole child socially, academically, and emotionally, and recognize that early learning spaces are inclusive and continue to work to make that happen. As Assistant Superintendent Langeferry mentioned, the First People's Principles of Learning are foundational in our work in learning and teaching, and we recognize our work in embedding those in our learning experiences every day. I'd like to share a few examples of how the First People's Principles are evident in the early learning work we do. The principles tell us that learning ultimately supports the well-being of the self, the family, the community, the land, the spirits, and the ancestors. And we do that by inviting families into our K-Transition meetings, our K-Welcome evenings, our Strong Start programs, and our Welcome Center. We invite them into classrooms and take part in their learning to share their stories and share their culture with our community. The principles tell us that learning is holistic, reflexive, reflective, experiential, and relational. And we honor that by providing experiences for children that meet them as whole children. We provide hands-on, rich experiential learning that allows them to be the children they are. Our principles tell us that learning involves patience and time, and we know that each child grows and develops at their own pace in their own time, and our role is to provide the necessary supports, the structures, the scaffolding, the environment, and the encouragement to let that happen. And the principles tell us that learning requires exploration of one's identity, and we do that by nurturing the unique gifts, talents, and strengths of our individual learners. As Mrs. Langeferry, our Assistant Superintendent Langeferry mentioned, all of our children are strong, capable, and full of potential. And if we provide collaborative, inclusive, connected, and accessible environments where play and joy are nurtured, where students are provided opportunities for rich learning, and where we nurture the individual gifts of students, we can help them achieve that full potential. The Educated Citizen is a ministry document that talks about the skills we'd like to see children have when they leave the K-12 system. But if that's to happen, we have to ensure we begin our planning right from the beginning of our early learning journey. We need to scaffold and select the learning opportunities for students and help provide opportunities for them to grow and create and develop those skills. We begin with the end in mind. And as you can see, our work to support collaborative teams within schools in response to the needs of student learning interests will not only impact them as early learners, but through the K-12 system and beyond. Our next action is the work to explicitly link the early learning framework and the BC curriculum and professional development for staff. As you can see, communication is evident in the early learning framework and our curricular and core competencies. And we continue to make these connections explicit and evident in the work we do with our teams through networking meetings, professional development opportunities, through staff meetings and collaboration time. An example of this would be the story workshop series offered by Shelley Hedgedis and supported by Amanda Slade in her Changing Results for Young Children series. Children are encouraged to use hands-on, rich materials to create stories and then to share their stories in both oral language, written word, and sometimes with augmented communication devices. And these examples show us that children use multiple modes of expressive language to share their learning. They create stories and other texts to deepen their awareness, and they're able to communicate with peers and adults. We continue to offer Pro-D in the forms of WordWorks Daily, in the form of sound walls and data collection for intentional learning and growth opportunities. And we continue to connect the curriculum to the early learning framework. Our schools are continuing the conversations and the implementation through their staff meetings, their collaboration time, and their school planning. I'd like to turn it over to Assistant Superintendent Langeferry to share something further.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. So our next goal, our action, was to collaborate with early learning community partners. And we're so grateful for the partners that we have the opportunity to work with, knowing that our strength comes in the partnership that we have and in learning from one another. We could provide many examples, but one example I want to share with you this evening is the partnership that is occurring between the Welcome Center facilitator, Donna Gabriel Robbins, who's sharing and creating a space with the YMCA of Greater Vancouver. Together they collaborated to create a welcoming space that honors the children and has an Indigenous focus. And the Aboriginal program from school district staff were involved in with their input in the space, and also are involved in the gifts and gatherings creation that the facilitator there, Sam Colley, is implementing throughout the district. We're very excited about the dual credit program, another partnership that we have with the University of Fraser Valley and Abbey School District. And this, we have had 8 students sign up for this, grade 12 students for the fall already. And the students will be able to take ECE courses at UFE, 4 courses in total, 2 per semester, both at UFE, at Abbey School, and then here at the Langley School Board office. So after they take 2 of their courses, they are already hireable as an assistant, an ECE assistant, and then they're well on their way to either continuing their work as an ECE educator or to apply those courses towards other degree they might be interested, such as education. So we just love how this comes full circle. Hopefully they're going to want to come back and work in Langley School District because we have lots of opportunities for ECE in the near future. And this is one of them. Our next action was to implement the Seamless Day kindergarten pilot, and we are excited to say that we were able to open this on April 1st. I do call it a labor of love, as it is just a long process that was took a lot of learning, and we're just so happy to see that we were able to take care of these children in a school setting. For those of you who are unfamiliar with Seamless Day, it's a way for the kindergarten classroom to interact with childcare. So the childcare starts in the morning, the ECE stays throughout the morning into the kindergarten classroom. Another ECE starts midway through the day and spends the after school time providing childcare for the children. It really provides an opportunity for consistent relationships, to have same people and places, which is so important for these youngest children. The childcare kindergarten room is licensed with a licensing officer through Fraser Health. And it's an opportunity for the ECE to run that. So for high quality early care and learning to occur in the classroom. And we really do believe that we are providing this opportunity to reduce the daily transitions for children and family, which is reducing stress for those families. So we always want to get better at our work, and we need to be asking each other reflective questions. And so our inquiry for our Seamless Day project is, to what extent has Seamless Day contributed to the following School District 35 early learning shared values in order to support families and their childcare needs? And those values are the foundation and basis of our early learning belief statements that we created last year. And our next work is to to engage with administrators, Strong Start facilitators, and teachers K-3 throughout the district regarding the new vision of the early learning in Langley. And I'm going to pass it back to Kim, who's going to share some ways that we've been doing so.
Thank you, Assistant Superintendent Leitchbury. In our work to engage with administrators, Strong Start facilitators, and teachers, we're using our networking meetings as a way for connecting the pieces for administrators so that collectively we can find ways to implement that vision in our schools. We want to create access points for all learners. Daily 5, WordWorks Daily, Outdoor Exploration, and Story Workshop are examples of our work targeted at focusing on skills in a play-based environment, and examples of the way we are connecting the curriculum to the early learning framework. Our goal of providing access points for all learners through Universal Design for Learning and the response to intervention are our continued work in ensouling all of our schools. The Teaching and Learning Framework is a document that guides our curious questions and conversations around teaching, guides our work around student learning and classroom practice, and allows us to continue to do the great work we do to provide learning opportunities for all students while nurturing their individual gifts. As you can see, we have many indicators for performance, and we use primary reading results, our progress reporting for kindergarten, and our strong start attendance as some ways in which we target our planning and our learning in classrooms. And each of these indicators gives us different ways of looking at the way our students are learning and different ways at which we support the planning. They're just a few of the indicators, but what we use them for is to be intentional about the way that we implement supports and the way that we implement practice in our classrooms. And we model the use of data to inform practice for our classrooms and for our other administrators. As you can see from this extensive list, there are many ways in which we are able to triangulate data and take a look at how our students are doing and what we need to do for them next. I'm going to turn it back to Assistant Superintendent Lageberry to share some examples of the data we collect and how it informs our work.
So this fall, fall 2021, last fall, we engaged with the Childhood Experience Questionnaire, which was available to us through the Human Early Learning Partnership, help from UBC. And this was a different sort of questionnaire from the EDI, as it asked the parents, what kind of experiences did you have with your children, and what kind of experiences were you able to provide for your children? Because we wanted to be able to offer some of those, experiences that maybe they didn't have the opportunity to have before entering into kindergarten. So this Childhood Experience Questionnaire took place in September and October, and the data was available to schools right away and to kindergarten teachers and to administrators as they were able to respond to the data. And we know that COVID was a limitation for some of these families and again for some of the staff. So we're going to be doing this again next year in a way that provides even more access to the questionnaire, doing it at gradual entry so parents will have an easy way to access, and so that we'll have more data for the ongoing year. And of course, we're all familiar with the EDI, and we've been showing the Wave 7 EDI data for a few years now, and we're happy to share that we just completed the Wave 8 EDI questionnaire on April 3rd, and so the data will be available for us in the summer and into the fall so that we can make informed decisions. So just to reiterate our early learning actions, it's been a really busy year. It's been a pleasure to work on these actions with a supportive team, and we know that our work is not complete. We have more important collaboration, reflection, sharing, and support that must take place. We are pleased with our progress and grateful for the team of colleagues and families working together for our children. Anne Pello, in her book From Teaching to Thinking, asks these questions. What kind of people do we want to be, and what kind of world do we want to live in? Our work as educators will impact who we are and thus the world we live in. And we know that this is such important work because it does. It's the work of the heart. It's about working together to create compassionate social and academic learning environments for all learners. And we know that we are striving for an innovative, inspiring, and unified learning community with the mission for all students to reach their full potential. And we look forward to what's coming next. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation, and I know that there's a few questions coming up. I've got a speakers list, so I'll start out with Trustee Suzanne Perot. Would you like to take it?
Thank you, ladies, for an incredibly thoughtful presentation. It was so loaded with such important content and learnings and teachings for all of us to walk away with, and I thank you for the care that you put into it and how you pulled all that information together to deliver it to us today. I love that you're looking at data. I love that you're like lots of data, looking at our superintendent, because I keep talking about data and disaggregating data and where can we go with the data. So that really excites me. And it excites me also that dual credit program. Like how amazing when we get our kids ready to go, right? We need just more and more of those types of programming. So you guys are just doing fabulous work. My question comes with regard to when we're looking at our foundational conversation of inspiring all learners and how we respond to some of our learners who we're losing in the gaps, because we are. I would be foolish to think and pretend we're not. And so when I look at that, and I'm looking at the model that we're looking at coming in right now, what we're doing, how will we intersect with the upcoming hub model? We're going to see that opening up in 2023 in Okanagan and then moving provincially. That will be supporting families and students with respect to different types of supports, SLP, OT, etc. And I suspect there will be some overlap that will occur, or could occur. Are we looking at any conversations on how that model will be working with our students, especially our students with disabilities, both physical and developmentally, coming in? Because they'll be using that system prior to hitting us, and then be required to continue using that system ongoing throughout their academic career to ensure that things like strong IEPs and proper supports are being implemented in accordance to that front loading that we're talking about through the Strong Start program. Do we have any thoughts around that? Maybe that's a question for our superintendent. I'm not sure.
Well, if you're Superintendent Gill, would you like to? I was going to say, I know that we're in the early stages of understanding our role in that hub model and where it will land. And I know that we're just starting early conversations about that. What I do know is that our strength has come in our conversations and our partnerships. And each and every day we learn more about how we can work together and really use the experts such as SLPs. And where that comes from, those great conversations, it comes from the professional learning communities that we have in place, not only at the school level that you saw the diagram there and how we run them through, but those are actually occurring also at the district level. So the intersectionality between the Learning Support Services Department and the Instructional Services Department, you see that modeled here. We are, that is occurring throughout the district staff and into the schools as well. And we just hope to continue that work with one another. In terms of the hubs themselves, I can't speak to the direction the district will go in. I don't know if it's too early to identify that yet.
So I think one of the important pieces is to have the right people in the right places on the bus right now. And I think that's one of the things that we've been focusing in on in the last 2 to 3 years, and ensuring that we were steps ahead of other districts as far as the work we were doing in preparing ourselves around the early learning framework. And I think over the last 3 years, Lisa has done an amazing job. Kim has certainly come on board this year and done some fantastic work as well. It lays that foundation. In addition to that, we're going to do a lot of learning for the next year. I know that the hub is going to open up not in our district or in our region, and being able to communicate and work with other districts who are working through the model will be helpful, but having the right people in place to have those conversations is going to be really important for us as far as preparing ourselves as we move forward as well.
Thank you. The next question I have is from Trustee David Todd, please.
Thank you. So, and honestly, thank you so much for what you've taken on. I think early childhood is just like an exceptional time, and you can't look into the eyes of a child and see and not be affected by the potential and just their life force. And you talk about play and joy. I think the old model of school did a lot to actually kind of squeeze that out of kids, and I'm glad that we're realizing that when it comes to kids that build on their strengths around play and joy, because that's what they do totally naturally. So I really appreciate the direction that we're taking on this. And I have a few musings, and then there's a very serious question. I think I know the answer, but are transition meetings for all K, or just the ones that have previously had some kind of difficulty, or maybe they had some vulnerability at daycare or something like that at the schools? So I'll let you answer that very yes or no.
So in the fall, welcome meetings for all families. And so that occurs during that's why the gradual entry calendar is in place, so that we can have those welcome meetings. The transition meetings that Kim was speaking to are in particular for students who may need that extra meeting in advance. And the initial meeting happens in typical times at the school board office, where families are welcome to come and ask some questions. And at that time, connections are made with the administrator, and then invitations for specific dates and visits and plans are put in place for over the spring, so that the students have a smooth transition into kindergarten. So welcome meetings for all, transition meetings for those who are in need of a different kind of experience.
Thank you. That's what I thought. And one thing, there's nothing quite as humbling as teaching. And sometimes you assume communication, but I got a good example today, standing in front of a grade 2 class in the shape of the day, and I'm writing these things on, and I'm thinking I'm rocking it, and then 3 hands go up. What's LA? And I just went, oh, and it was just one of those moments. Don't use abbreviations. And then I tried to explain, well, it's actually language arts, but I'm not even sure why it's called language arts. And yeah, we lost them. No, I'm not saying you did, but that's the whole communication, especially with kids, because they got you on them. And my last one is, you talked about the childhood experience questionnaire. And again, I think that's critical when it comes to early childhood, because their experiences, and again, I had it today, I was trying to get very colorful about a caterpillar, and there was a kid, he had no idea what a cocoon was, a chrysalid, none of that. I go, have you never seen like a caterpillar? No, there was no experience. So how are we going to effectively level up on something like that before the kid gets into the school? Thank you.
Well, there's 2 ways that the childhood experience questionnaire data is shared. It's shared across as a district. So this is what the district is showing us, and then it's shared per school. So the kindergarten teachers can actually see where is the language and language acquisition for our kindergartens in terms of their experience. And so they can look at that and say, wow, 10% of our students, 10% of our parents believe that they've had enough, or a typical amount, or an adequate amount, or feel confident in the amount of conversation and interaction with other children, which is quite a low number. So that teacher will say, okay, that needs to be our focus. So that's what the data can do with us right away at the school level and at the classroom level. It can go right immediately back to that teacher, and so they can see that.
Thank you very much. And continuing on, if we could, Trustee Charlie Fox next. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Excellent information, and it's great to see the dovetail there with our strategic plan and how it's being implemented across the district. Trustee Perot mentioned the dual credit program. How awesome is that? To be able to expand and give our pre-graduate students the opportunity to get into a program that's going to actually benefit them and get them into a learning situation, which they're probably going to enjoy for the rest of their life. So excellent. Question though, seamless day, kindergarten. Are we going to expand that? What's the focus on that? Did you hear from the ministry in terms of where that's going? I know it's been a bit of a trial and tribulation getting it going, but where are we going with it long term?
We have an opportunity to keep the one in place with the ministry support, we know, for the next 2 years at least. So the pilot project is a 3-year commitment from the ministry. So we have that in place. The ministry just shared out some news that there might be some possible opportunities to expand at other schools in the district. So we're looking at that as possibilities. Again, it's early stages. They're offering just an opportunity to share the interest, and then they see how many districts have been interested. There are some districts who don't have a seamless day, so they might be prioritized moving forward. So from the very beginning, the seamless day intent wasn't to be in every school. It was to be as a pilot project to see what childcare could look like in schools. So it's at this point, nickel-meckle only, and we'll invest all of our energy into that one and make it the best we can be, and then we'll see what brings.
Thank you. That was my question as well. I have one further question. Go ahead, Marnie Wilson.
Just gonna, oh, there it goes. I had the same question as Trustee Fox, just because I love that we are implementing this, and I know how great it is for families, like you said, with the taking off the stress and the worry of multiple places and your child getting to kindergarten from daycare. But the chances are that a lot of families have more than one child, and unless you have twins, you are dropping another child somewhere else for before and after school care, and then you're getting your child this opportunity for the seamless day. So I was very interested in if we are going to have before and after school care for other grades, but you've answered that. I hope that's coming soon. Let's hope someone's listening about how great that would be. My other question, I guess, because we've talked so much about how great this is for children, is just the dual credit program. I'm ecstatic that we're offering that. I think that's a great opportunity for students, but I'm worried that when I first heard the proposal that we were doing this, that it was going to be like, I think 7 in the morning till noon for the ECE, and then there was a switch off and a different ECE worker was going to do like noon to 5 or something, and they were going to be these 2 5-hour shifts. And I've always promoted that we need to give people a living wage, and the way to do that is to give them enough hours in a day so that that wage can actually make them a livable wage. So do you have any information on how long these shifts are for the ECEs, and if there's any way that they can work something else if the shift is shorter? And that's my first question, and I guess that's my question. I'll just stick with that.
Contract language. Yeah. So the first shift starts at 7:05 in the morning and goes to 11:45, I want to say. And the second starts, the second starts at noon and goes till 6. And so the days aren't, and I might be wrong in the morning, the minutes in the morning, I'm forgetting it right now, the details around that. But we did work within the parameters that we had. You know, we had a lot of guidelines that we needed to follow in terms of what time they needed to start and how many the overlap during the day wanted to have that occur. So you're right, it doesn't fill the 7-hour day for early childhood educators. But there are the interest that we had in it was from the early childhood educators that did apply. It fit their schedule very much so. And the one who was beginning early in the morning really wanted that for her family, wanted to start early and end when she did. And then the other one wasn't available to do that in the morning because she wanted to take her kids to school in the morning and then have some time to do her work, and then come from in the noon to 6, and then somebody is able to pick up her kids after school. So it worked for the ECEs who did apply for the work, and I know that it doesn't need the 7 hours a day. And you know, we always want to consider what we can do for our workers. It's similar with our strong cert facilitators who have a 4-hour shift in the morning or the afternoon. It's not a full day, but it's a peak part of the day. You're welcome.
And Trustee Pro, I think you had a second question. If you'd like to share that with us now, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Ross. I'll be very brief. Thank you again, Lisa. Question, and I think this might actually go to our superintendent, Mr. Gill. We talked about at Donna Gabriel having, I don't know, I missed the Welcome Center. Are we going to see spaces, cultural spaces like that in more schools in our district as we continue to move forward for our students?
So the cultural center, and I stand to be corrected, but I believe that's community space
Sorry.
at Donna Gabriel. What? It's NLC space. So
Yes, yeah.
part of the new school build, and probably Secretary Treasurer can help me with the answer to this, is that there is opportunities for neighborhood learning spaces. And so what we were able to do with the neighborhood learning spaces was utilize them in different ways with different partners. And that was just one of the ways that we did. I think as far as space moving forward and even the space we have in our building has been opportunities to create space similar to the space you're describing would be beneficial for our students because we want to make sure that students see themselves in the places where they come to school.
Thank you very much. If I could just get a mover and a seconder for tonight, so for this presentation, so Trustee Suzanne Perot and Charlie Fox as a seconder, thank you very much. The Board of Education receives a report on early learning year 3 update for information as presented. All those in favor? And it passes unanimously. Thank you very much. And my particular favorite topic is school calendars, and so I'm looking forward to this. So would you like to continue your presentation?
Please. Oh, yes.
You've actually approved this calendar previously last year, but because we noticed some other districts had done some things, we wanted to align things, we put forward an amendment. So under this slide here, I'll apologize. You're going to see this language a lot in a lot of these presentations. Calendar regulation is specified in the School Act, and there are certain rules that apply and those kinds of things. So they're there for every time. So we do have to, of course, review any calendar that comes forward to trustees to make sure it meets with all of the regulations and different things. The amended school calendar, as any calendar put forward for trustees to consider to adopt, will always meet the minimum hours of instruction as specified in the school calendar regulation. The amended calendar, this is the colorful one, the one that only specifies the number of days not in session, the start of school, the end of school, winter break, 2-week spring break. It is not a detailed calendar. It will not have exact dates on when this design and assessment report card day is and that kind of stuff. That comes later. So again, with this first calendar that's in your package, the only change is the start date for March break. Just to give a little context, about 10, 12 years ago, the ministry actually published a calendar, and we didn't actually have to go through this process of district calendars because we just followed the ministry calendar. Everyone followed the ministry calendar. But that changed about 10, 12 years ago, and districts now have the ability to have calendars look the way they want to meet the needs of their community. It was adopted many years ago that we want to try to align, especially our spring break, with other districts around us. This is feedback we receive from parents as well as staff. Lots of people live in different communities, have kids here and there, and they like to do that. The trouble and the challenge is that not all districts adopt their calendars the same way we do. So last year, when the first calendar was brought forward, a number of districts around us had actually not even published their 2022-23 calendar yet, because there is no rules about how often you publish, how often you approve it, and how many years. Some districts do 5 years at a time, some do 3 years at a time, some do it 1 year at a time. So once those calendars were adopted, which was in the beginning of this school year, we noticed that the spring break, the 2-week spring break we had proposed, was off by a week with what everybody else wanted, which is why this calendar is being brought forward. The only change is to align the 2-week spring break, so as we always have, to try to keep it in line with everybody else in the Lower Mainland. Okay. And then again, you'll see this many times. These are the hours of instruction that must be met by our students. These are possible within the dates of this district calendar. That is the district calendar in your package. The only change from what you approved before is on the left side, March, second from the bottom there. Spring break starts on the 13th and ends on the 24th. So then I put that forward to you as a motion.
And thank you very much.
Chair Ross.
I'd like to get that motion on the floor. So I have a mover and a seconder, please, that the Board of Education approves the amended district calendar for 2022-2023 as presented. And Marnie Wilson, seconded by Tony Ward. Thank you. Thank you very much. All right, so Marnie and Shelley. Great. All those in favor? Oh, would you like to have a discussion? Sure. If you'd like to have discussion on this one, I didn't think there would be. It's a popular item though. Go ahead.
Did we put this out for feedback and did we receive it?
Yes. So thank you for pointing that out. With district calendars, we always put it out for feedback. That's part of the process. It's a 30-day feedback with the community. I think this time we got about 8 responses or so. That's not unusual. We don't tend to get an avalanche of responses for the district calendars. And the information we had is very similar to what we always get. Parents prefer non-instructional days to be, attached to weekends and stat holidays to make longer weekends. Sometimes we get some comments around, well, I'd rather spring break be in April, which are things we take as feedback, but we don't act on because it doesn't align with the other priorities that we have. Sometimes we get people who want school to go into July, so it varies. But we did get feedback, we did incorporate it. In fact, the public did identify an error in the district calendar that was put forward, as did the LTA when we met with them. And it was just an error on my part. I forgot to change the color of 3 of the dates in June, that they were actually the start of summer vacation and they looked like on the calendar they were instructional. That was corrected for the calendar that has been put forward to you.
Thank you, sir. No further questions at this time. And all those in favor of the motion, thank you very much. And it carried unanimously as well. The second one, the Board of Education approves the district calendar of 2024-2025 as presented. So would you like to speak to that, sir?
Thank you. So this will be very similar to the last one, except this is a new calendar brought forward. This Langley's process on adopting district calendars is to try to maintain 3 years of calendars on the website at all times. So as we move in, if we're currently in a year, this year comes off, so we have to add another one. So every year we will be bringing forward 1 district calendar to add on to the next one. We used to do it where we adopted 3 at a time, and then we waited for them to run out, and then we'd adopt another 3. But as you can imagine, that was a bit confusing for staff and parents when you're trying to, plan things in advance. So this is the calendar for 2024-25, which would, if adopted and approved by trustees, will maintain our 3 years of district calendars. Again, this is the high level one that indicates only days in session, days not in session, start of the year, end of the year. It is not the detailed specific calendars that comes next. Again, like I said before, we review it for calendar regulation, so it's in compliance. We always meet the minimum hours of instruction. Again, it's only non-instructional days. And again, the consultation process, as we talked about for the last one, started February 23rd and concluded March 30th. So it actually went longer than as required. And again, I've already mentioned to you some of the feedback that we got was very similar, as there was no error on this one, but other than that, the feedback we got was very similar. And again, those are the hours of instruction that must be met. So this is the calendar brought forward. And you can see, where vacation is and where the spring break is. To the best of our knowledge, the 2-week spring break is lining up with other districts. I did search every website in the Lower Mainland. And for those that have published the 2024-25 calendar, this is exactly, like our spring break is exactly in line. I'll be honest, there's about 4 or 5 districts that haven't published it yet. So we'll see where that takes us. But for the best of our knowledge, we've done that. See, I anticipate your questions, Trustee Todd. Okay, so I'll leave it to you for the motion.
And thank you. This is the recommended motion. The Board of Education approves the district calendar for 2024-2025. Mover, Charlie Fox, seconded by David Todd. All those in, any discussion on this one, please? Seeing none, all those in favor, please. Thank you very much. All right, it is carried unanimously. On to 7.3, which is the school calendars 2022-2023.
These are the development days, design and assessment report card dates. We've worked very hard over the years to try to bring the calendars together. So we used to at one time, Trustee Fox may remember, almost every school almost had a calendar. It was so diverse. And of course that drove our communities a little bit crazy, especially if you had kids in the local high school and the elementary school and everybody, no days were lining up. So we tried very hard. We still have 7 calendars, but part of that is we have a number of calendars that are specific for schools of choice, which have some very unique things that they bring to their calendar discussions. So I will go through all of this. I just want you to know that the process for this every year is to work with all of our employee groups very deliberately in order to make sure that people are aware of the dates and have input. Also, we work with our groups to ensure that during a 2-week spring break, which is something that we've had every year for many years and will probably continue to have, that our employees that might be negatively impacted by that spring break, we have LOUs that we sign in place in order to mitigate that so that nobody suffers loss of pay and those kinds of things. We do meet with the LTA every year as per our practice. They get the draft calendars in advance. They meet with myself and other members of HR. We go through some of the different dates. We did that this year and got some great suggestions, some of which were incorporated into some of these into the calendars. And our administration in the schools get the calendars in advance so they can get feedback at their schools through their staff, department heads, different structures that they work within. And all of that is fed back to develop these calendars that I'll present to you tonight. Okay, so again, I've sort of mentioned this. We've always, we work with school to do the alignment as much as we can. We integrate a 2-week spring break, basically by adding 5 days that kids aren't in session that they would normally be, and we gather input in a variety of ways. Okay, so this is the 2-week spring break. We have to add approximately 2 minutes a day to make up for the time lost in the 5 days that gets added to spring break that would normally be in session days. It's a rounding thing. Sometimes it's 9 minutes. It just kind of depends. And then we work with the LTA on that because it has contract implications, and we work through that. School board office staff, maintenance staff, IT staff, and other 12-month employees are not affected by the 2-week spring break because they work during that time. And then, as I mentioned before, with QP 1260 in the district, we have in the past and will continue to negotiate LOUs to mitigate the negative impact that it can have on our 10-month employees, which we have done again for this year. Okay, the total number of days. So this are the days you count from the first day, which is the first day after Labor Day, to the administrative day in June, and you take out the stats and the different things. There's 186 days in the school calendar. 179 of them are instructional, where students are in session, and 7 are non-instructional. There are 3 professional days, 1 administration day, 2 report card design and assessment days, and 1 school improvement day. These are the same non-instructional days we have every year. Okay, and sometimes the ministry will add another day which we incorporate, but that's not the case for next year. I will talk about the Truth and Reconciliation Day. That's not included as part of this. Please note that there are a couple of unique things on our calendar because it is Langley and we have all sorts of unique programs and we accommodate our calendars to do that. RC Garnet, which is a demonstration school, the staff in RC Garnet actually work in the May Pro D Day, and they will put on different presentations for teachers and other staff in the district. So in order to compensate them that, they have a different Pro D day. So on the elementary calendar, it'll note that RC Garnet has a different May Pro D day than the rest of the district. And Langley Education Center has for many years been on a 4-day week. They adjust their working times to ensure that instructional minutes are kept, but they have a 4-day week. So they have some different significant things about that because they don't work Fridays and that kind of thing. So these are the calendars to be that are in your package to be looked at tonight. I'm not going to put them all up on the screen. You do have them in your package. All elementary, middle are on the same calendars. Secondary semester is the same calendar. And then the rest are all different schools of choice that have unique calendars that reflect the unique nature and needs of those buildings. I just put one up. There's no way you're going to read the detail on there. It's way too small. But this is our elementary middle calendar. And you can see it breaks everything down so that you can see exactly where the days are. Typically, days when schools are closed, which is often stats and different things, are highlighted in black and italicized. I will draw your attention to the top under September. The 4th line down in September, September 30th is Truth and Reconciliation Day. That is included in our calendar for next year. The government has determined that that day is a day when schools are closed. Just to be clear, the government has not yet passed legislation to make it determine it to be a stat holiday. The federal government has done that for federal workers and federally regulated programs, but our provincial government hasn't done it yet. So what they're doing at this point is just advising us every year. Is this going to be a day when schools are closed or whatever it's, and they're working with our First Nations communities on what the best use is. But for next year, it will be a day closed, which is why we have 179 days in our calendar next year and not 180 days. Okay, our minutes have been adjusted to ensure that the hours of instruction are met, even though we have that 1 day more closed than I guess we've had in the past. Okay, so we do check all our calendars to make sure they're in compliance, that we meet the minimum hours. And we, as I mentioned a few times already, we meet with the LTA to make sure, because there's lots of language in the collective agreement with the LTA that starts about the bookends of the day, when teachers can start, how long they can work till, and we have to work collaboratively together to ensure that those everything there is met. We do sign an LOU every year to ensure that the exact number of minutes are covered. This is something that goes back 10 or 12 years that we've worked with the LTA on this. It's always been productive and helpful, and we always manage to get, to the right place on these things. And on that, Chair Ross, I'll pass it over to you.
And thank you very much. I'd like to get a mover and a seconder for tonight's motion before we get into discussion. So moved by David Todd and seconded by Charlie Fox. Thank you very much. Trustees have questions. I've got Shelley Coburn first. Go ahead, Shelley.
Thank you. Thank you for your work. I wouldn't want to be doing that. That was very thorough and very well done. My question will be to you, but I'm pretty sure you're going to redirect it to Superintendent Gill. And I would if I don't blame you. So, as a parent who no longer has children in the district, but when I hear 2 minutes a day, right? So I often hear kids don't go to school enough, they're never in school, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, well, they're in school this many days a year. And so what kind of learning, real meaningful learning, takes place in 2 minutes extra a day?
Nick Gill?
Thank you for that. I think trying to look at, rather than the 2 minutes, looking at the overall day, looking at the opportunity for, again, we've really been having lots of conversations around wellness as well, and ensuring that our staff is in a good place, and in fact ensuring our students are in a good place as well around their wellness. The 2-week spring break is something that's been a part of the Langley School District for a number of years, and I think if we tried to go back to a week and put those minutes back into the day of instruction, we would have a mutiny on our hands, honestly, because I think parents have really appreciated that opportunity to spend quality time with their kids. And when it comes to, the the additional day for September 30th that's been added. If it's 2 minutes that we have to do to make that happen, we'll do that. It's the right thing to do because we will follow and acknowledge the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, absolutely, and we'll make that sacrifice.
Yeah, I would call for 2 weeks in spring break, even though I don't even have kids. I still take well, I have kids, they're just not in school anymore. I take 2 weeks off at spring break, so I totally get that. And the extra day, of course, I fully support that. It's just from a practical perspective of, as a parent, you know, what do I say to a parent when they're like, what's 2 minutes at the end of the day? And so, you know, a very good answer is it's that wellness that happens for that extra week off. That's what that 2 minutes a day is valuable. That's what I hear you say. Just want to make sure I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. It is the wellness. And again, I think what happens in a school day, whether it's 2 minutes, 4 minutes, I mean, every minute in the day is an opportunity to make connections with kids as well. And I think, you know, having the additional 1 or 2 minutes is an additional touch point for two more students at the end of the day. And I think that's not such a bad opportunity as well. And our staffs know the importance of making those social emotional connections and making those academic connections and utilizing every second of every day.
I must say, Superintendent Gill, excellent answer.
Is that how you would have answered?
Well, probably not quite as good as that. I mean, my mind goes to different places. As a, you know, I used to be a science teacher, a high school science teacher before I went into administration, what seems like a million years ago. And I can tell you that an extra 2 minutes on my class, I know it sounds like, well, what are you going to do in 2 minutes? It sounds like that, but I can tell you when I'm planning lab activities and stuff with my kids, 2 minutes is actually a big deal. There are things that I can actually accomplish with the kids I couldn't. But I do completely understand that on the surface, you're kind of like, you know, it really doesn't seem like much. But as a teacher, I would use those 2 minutes. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you very much for your responses, everyone. And so now I'll call the question. All those in favor? And it passes unanimously again. All right, thank you. That was wonderful. Next, we have the Secretary Treasurer's report, the annual facilities grant. Would you like to take that away, Mr. Brian Azali, please?
Thank you, Chair Ross. Just in your package is the proposed spending for the annual facilities grant for this coming year. Just a reminder for trustees that the annual facilities grant is a year-by-year funding that we receive from the ministry to help offset some of the costs we have on the maintenance in some of our facilities. It's definitely not enough to do all of it. So we do have to pick and choose on some of the things that we spend underneath that fund. Also want to remind them that it doesn't follow our fiscal year. It follows the ministry fiscal year. So that is a April 1st, 2022 to March 31st, 2023, what this is for. Our funding this year under the annual facilities grant is $3,488,377, slightly up from last year. And as always, we have to pay a portion of that funding to the capital asset management system program that all districts has to contribute to for $57,898. So the plan is in your package, and with that, I will hand it back to Chair Ross.
Thank you very much. I'll get a mover and a seconder, and we'll open this up for discussion. Do I have a mover for the Board of Education approves the annual facilities grant 2022/2023 spending plan? Go ahead, David Todd and Charlie Fox. Seconds it. Thank you. Questions? Go ahead, David Todd, please.
Thank you. I appreciate in the grant you detail 4 chargers for transits and maintenance, and that's electrical systems. I believe that's at Aldergrove Community Secondary School.
No, those are for at the maintenance yard to start getting ready to do electric vehicles for our maintenance fleet. So we are in process of purchasing already under the funds that the board had put aside for the 2 electric buses that are at Aldergrove. We're just waiting for the buses and the chargers to arrive.
Thank you. Go ahead, Shelley Coburn, please.
Thank you, Secretary Treasurer Isley. I do have a question for you. Don't laugh. What was that little bit of money that everybody pays into? Can you explain that to me, please?
It's the program that the ministry uses to monitor the system. It's a set portion that all districts contribute to the ministry. It's been paid for many years.
So just a follow-up. So I just want to make sure I understand and that the public understands. So the ministry gives us money, and of that money, we give them back money so they can monitor how we spend the money?
It's the system to track all of the stuff, yes.
Thank you for your question. Any other questions at this point? Seeing none, I'll call the question then, that the Board of Education approves the annual facilities grant 2022-2023 spending plan as presented. All those in favor? And it carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Go ahead, sir. Your next item is the annual 5-year capital plan bylaw 2022-2023.
It's a reminder for trustees that every year we submit the 5-year capital plan, and in March of every year the ministry responds to that capital plan. That response letter is in your package tonight, and just did want to highlight a few items that were in there. The next item also was in our capital plan response letter, which I'll address in the next section. The ministry did approve some minor capital for us. They didn't approve any major capital items for us this year. The minor capital that they did approve was phase 2 of the DW Poppy plumbing upgrades. So the first phase has been underway this year and is just wrapped up, and we'll be starting the second phase, which will complete that project. Peter Ewart windows, we started that first phase this year, so that'll get us pretty much finished on that project and replacing all the windows at Peter Ewart. They've approved an HVAC system for Walnut Grove Secondary. The unit over the admin and the IT rooms is failing, and so they've approved a replacement unit for that. We received universally accessible playground for Coghlan Elementary, and we received approval for 1 bus replacement for this year. A reminder for trustees previously that we had in our letter in prior years a couple approvals to go to project definition reports, the one being an elementary for Northeast Latimer, which is currently being held up with fisheries, and where we continue to work with the ministry to try to get that through as quick as possible. Peter Ewart seismic and expansion, which is sitting with the ministry waiting for approval, and in addition for Langley Secondary, which we are continuing to work with the ministry to submit to them. So with that, I will turn it back and answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. So let me just get this on the table. I need a mover for the annual 5-year capital plan bylaw. So moved by Charlie Fox, seconded by, oh, thank you, Shelley Coburn. Thank you. All right, so questions from trustees first off. Go ahead, Charlie Fox.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Although I moved this particular motion for this particular, the capital projects as outlined, I'm extremely disappointed in where we're at in terms of where this district's at with its capital project. Not the work that our staff have done. I want to make it very abundantly clear. Our staff have been very strong, as have my fellow trustees, in advocating for additional building space in probably the second fastest growing district in this province. But we need schools, and we need schools now. We need classrooms for students to be in. And although we see additions to Langley Secondary School, we see the seismic in addition to Peter Ewart. And yes, this week we did celebrate $42 million to purchase a piece of property for a new middle secondary school site in Willoughby. We need to continue as trustees, elected officials, advocating for more classrooms sooner than we're getting. We're not meeting demand, and that's not good enough in this day and age for the education of our students. And I want to say clearly, although I support this motion and moved it, I feel strongly that it's in its totality inadequate at this point in time.
And thank you. I think we all concur with those comments, but you trustees have any other further things they'd like to say? Okay, so we've got a mover and a seconder, so I'll just read it one more time, and I apologize for the public. We have to do this 4 times, so it's a little bit lengthy, but the school district number 35 Langley Capital Plan 2022-2023 Capital Plan number 2022-23-CPSD 35-001 in the amount of $2,182,417 be given first reading. All those in favor? And it is unanimous. Thank you very much. I need now a mover for and a seconder, please, again, for the second one. Okay, David Todd and Shelley Coburn, seconded. Thank you very much. The school district number 35 Langley Capital Plan 2022/2023, Capital Plan number 2022/23-CPSD 35-01 in the amount of $2,182,417 be given second reading tonight. All those in favor? Move. I moved it and seconded it already. So all those in favor? Thank you. It is unanimous. Great. Okay. Mover and seconder again, please. The Board of Education number 35 Langley. Shelley Coburn moves it. And seconded by Charlie Fox. Thank you. The school district 35 Langley approves having all 3 readings of the capital plan 2022-2023 capital bylaw number 2022/23-CPSD 35-01 in the amount of $2,182,417 at tonight's meeting. This must be unanimous if we're going to do this tonight, folks. So all those in favor, please. And it is unanimous. Great, thank you very much. The last one. Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? That the school board number 35 Langley Capital Plan 2023-2023, Capital Plan number 2022-23, CPSD 35-01 in the amount of $2,182,417 be given third reading and passed and adopted on this 19th day of April 2022. This is Suzanne Perot. And seconded by David Todd. Thank you very much. All those in favor, please. And it is unanimous again. Thank you very much. Okay, on to 8.3, the school site acquisition charge. We'll have a similar response to this one as well. There's 4 motions on this one as well. Go ahead, sir.
As trustees will recall, we've been undertaking a process to revise our school site acquisition charge. And at the September 21st, 2021 meeting, the trustees approved one of the first steps of the eligible school sites resolution, which was then sent to both municipalities who both accepted those eligible school sites. The last piece of that was then to send it to the ministry and to get them to approve that as well, which they have done in our capital plan response letter. So the last step in this process, we will hopefully do tonight. There's a bylaw in your package, which requires the 3 readings and the motion for all to be done at tonight's meeting to adopt the school site acquisition charge, which would move us to the maximum, which still doesn't cover the needs of the district, but that's as much as we can charge. And once that is approved tonight, we would be notifying the municipalities, and there's a 60-day grace period with which anything that's done during those 60 days would be the old rates. Anything after the 60 days will be the new rates. So these rates would be effective 60 days after tonight.
Thank you, Super Secretary Treasurer. I need a mover and seconder that the school district number 35 Langley Capital Bylaw 2022-02 school site acquisition charge bylaw be given first reading. First one is from David Todd. seconded by Charlie Fox. Oh, okay, a question, please. Go ahead.
I have two questions. My first question is, and my second question is, was there feedback from the city or the township about what they think about this? I didn't hear a lot of opposition, so I'm just wondering if there was any direct feedback that you could give to the public. Secretary Treasurer Isley.
No, it does not need to be unanimous. It's just like any other motion or bylaw, it just needs a majority of the board. There was no feedback from township. The only thing that came from the city was a request that it be used for upgrades on their facilities, which is not allowable under the school site acquisition charge, and that has been explained to them. But that's all we've received. There was no pushback on either side.
Thank you. And I have a question, and then David Todd's got one, I know, and maybe something else will come up. Just to give context for the public, so I'm a developer. I'm building 10 units. They're $100,000 each. Haha. What sort of school site? How does this? What's it going to cost that developer? How is this going to affect him? Is it $1,000 a unit, or how is it? Just to get some context. That's all.
It depends on the classification. There's 5 classifications based on density, and they range from $600 to $1,000.
$600 per unit.
To $1,000. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you very much. Okay, David Todd, go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Echoing Trustee Fox's previous comments about capital, and we need capital build. This further reiterates that we are doing everything possible at our level as a district to make sure that we have buildings for our kids, and that's the most important thing. So no one takes lightly into this. We've done our homework. We've now done all the legislative changes that need to be made in order to do this, and this is to get us buildings quicker. The only thing preventing us from having, from having those buildings is just permission to build them. So this is another barrier we've removed, or we're in the process of removing, in order to get schools built in Langley. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Todd. Over to Trustee Ward, please.
Okay, my question to the chair. Echoing your comment to Secretary Treasurer Isley, so it's a unit price, not a percentage base? And the reason why I'm asking is with this rapid inflation in the current real estate market, when it's tied in as a percentage, obviously that's going to cost a lot more in the long run, potentially, to the consumer when it's passed on, because it's passed on effectively. So is it a unit fee, and how do they plan on scaling that to reflect inflation? Maybe you can't address that.
It doesn't get scaled. It's a dollar amount, and there's a cap, and this would put the district at the cap for each of the units. And in the report, previously it showed that for us to actually pay for the land, it would probably need to be 4 times the charge.
Thank you, Trustee Ward. On to Trustee Coburn. I think you had a response as well. Did you?
Okay. So just again, for clarification for our friends, the public, I want to make sure that everybody understands what this is. So I want to make sure I understand. School site acquisition charge is a charge that's levied against developers to go towards the build of new schools. The money then gets transferred to the school district, where we hold it essentially like a savings account. And then when the government comes and says they're going to approve us to build a school at a site they've approved, they go into our bank account and they take the money. But if there's zero balance in that account, do we or do we not still get a school?
It's not actually for the building of schools, it's for the purchase of land. So the only requirement, to answer your second part, if that fund is empty, the only requirement that the ministry has is if we're asking for a site in our 5-year capital plan, that we have a school site acquisition charge, which we were compliant with prior to this. So if they approved a piece of land and our bank balance would be zero, they would pay the full fund for that piece of land.
Right, and so I want to make sure that we understand that this money is spent on land acquisition in areas where there's rapid development. So again, at the discretion of the ministry, and that even if we didn't have the money, as long as we had a charge and a small balance, even if it was a small balance, we would still get our school.
Yes, so it's meant to buy land based on the 5-year capital plan that we submit. If the ministry approves the site acquisition, they just approve the site acquisition. And basically when we're completing the deal, they ask what the balance is in that fund and we deduct that from what they send us. So if the balance was zero, then they would send us the full amount. So we contributed to the middle secondary site. So our balance is pretty low right now.
So so I just want to make sure everyone understands this is an additional charge levied against developers that goes to us to hold for the ministry, so that when the ministry approves us acquiring land in a place they approve, they take the money. So essentially, to me, my concern is that it's just going to be downloaded to the consumer, from the developer to the consumer. And that really it's an ineffectual tax that pits local governments against each other when really you're a glorified savings account for the provincial government. So, don't be surprised if I don't vote for this motion. I just wanted to give a little bit of rationale. Trustee Coburn isn't standing in the way of new school builds. Trustee Coburn just likes to make sure that it's understood what the government is doing. That's all.
Thank you. And seeing no other hands at this point, I'll call the question. All those in favor of the school district number 35 capital plan? Okay, all those in favor? Any opposed? And one is opposed. Motion's carried. Thank you very much. And now we have to do it again. So can I have a mover and seconder that the school district number 35 Langley capital bylaw 2022-02 school site acquisition charge be given second reading tonight? Moved by Mourning Wilson, seconded by David Todd. Any questions? All those in favor? It's carried. Any against? Okay, one against.
Do you want me to mix it up?
Yeah. I won't say. And next, this one has to be unanimous for tonight. Okay, this one has to be.
To have all 3 readings, it has to be unanimous.
Yeah, to have all 3 readings tonight.
Yeah.
So you're just reading that you're.
So Trustee Coburn, the board has to agree to do all 3 readings in one night, or otherwise we have to do it at the next public meeting, the 3rd reading. We can't do 3 readings without the board agreeing to it as unanimous. The bylaw itself only needs a majority.
Okay, I need a mover tonight. Okay, David Todd, and seconded by Charlie Fox. Thank you. That the Board of Education School District 35 approves having all 3 readings of the capital bylaw 202-202 school site acquisition charge bylaw as presented tonight. Must be unanimous, and it is. Thank you very much. Carried unanimously. And final reading tonight. A mover and a seconder, please. Can I have a mover? Marnie Wilson and also Tony Ward. Okay, that the school district number 35 Langley capital bylaw 202-02 school site acquisition charge be given 3rd reading, passed and adopted on the 19th day of April 2022. All those in favor, please. And those against? Thank you very much. It's carried. Absolutely. All right. On to new business. And I know that in advance, we got a couple of motions from Trustee Marnie Wilson. And if you'd like, would you read them up? Go ahead.
Great.
Okay, so my first motion is, be it resolved that the Langley Board of Education directs staff to investigate the cost of changing the walk limits in policy 18 student transportation from 3.2 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4.8 kilometers for students in grades 8 to 12 to 3 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4 kilometers for students in grade 8 to 12. To be brought back to the board by the June 2022 regular meeting.
Thank you very much. I'm seeing you're the mover.
I'm the mover.
Is there a second for tonight's motion? All right. Is there any discussion on this?
Yes.
Go ahead. David Todd, and also.
I'd like to speak.
Oh, you get. Yeah, Marty can speak to it first, okay? And then. Go ahead, Marnie.
Thank you. Okay, I have brought this forward at several meetings and in several committees, and it seems to always be referred somewhere else. So I decided that it needs to be given a fulsome discussion and debate that it deserves. None of us can deny that the issue of transportation has come to us repeatedly during this term on the board. And although some of the concerns are based around safe walking routes, better sidewalks, crosswalks, lighting, etc., which we know come under the city or township jurisdiction, many of the concerns are regarding the walk limits. I walk on a regular basis for exercise and cannot fathom students walking these distances every morning and afternoon in all types of conditions. 4.8 kilometers takes on average 45 minutes to an hour if you're walking briskly. In my opinion, that is too far for a student to do twice a day, thus creating a real obstacle or barrier to learning. Whenever this topic comes up, we are given the impression that changing the walk limits will come at a massive cost. And would we rather have students receiving more help in the classroom or a bus ride? Well, until we know the actual cost, we cannot speculate on this. This motion is simply asking for us to have factual information to base decisions around and create policy around, instead of simply making decisions based on speculation or guesses. I understand it will create work for staff and that people are stretched thin, but it is work that could potentially remove barriers for families, so it is valuable work. Thank you. I hope you all support my motion.
Thank you, Trustee Wilson. And now I'll go to my speakers list, and I've got a number of people that'd like to speak to this, starting out with David Todd. Would you speak?
Thank you. And I want to start off by saying, Trustee Wilson, I totally get where you're coming from, and I know you have genuine concern for transportation and the safety of all our students. And on many occasions, I totally agree and reach across and understand and applaud your persistence in this. On one or two counts, I am curious that perhaps policy, because if you're looking at changing a policy, typically you use the policy committee to study something and then bring a recommendation to us. And this is a policy that you're attempting to change, rather than have the board reach in and tell policy you need to change a policy. But I understand you're in a catch-22, I believe, and policy can't really change something if it has financial implications, yet this is strictly a policy concern. My other concern is, of course, financial, because there are times this year we've worked extra hard, and you're aware, finance facilities, of a budget year of trying to get to some kind of balanced budget. We've slowly been working our way out of a deficit budget, and this year we spent extra time just trying to get that due to various factors, and now you're asking staff to go and do other work, additional work on this issue, and I get it. I did a quick Google search of mileage, our walk limits of the districts around us. Surrey, K to 3, 4 kilometers. 4 to 12, 4.8 kilometers. Abbey, 3.2 for K to 5 and 6 to 8. 4 for 9 to 12. Victoria, and I know they're not right beside us, but 4.0 for K-7, 4.8 for secondary. Fraser Cascade, K, 1.6. 1 to 7, 4 kilometers, and Fraser Cascade 8 to 12, 4.8. So those were the one that was different was Mission, and that they had the lowest in the Lower Mainland of 2 kilometers for elementary, 3.2 for secondary, but as well aware of the topography of Mission, there's reasons why they probably have lower walk limits than some other areas in the Lower Mainland. I think in times in education when our financial dollar is squeezed, and I agree with you, there's safety, there's all those concerns, but there are things you need to do and there are things that are nice to do. And unfortunately for me, this expenditure looks like a nice to do. And I know that you're just asking right now for staff time, but I feel a bit of a crunch with this budget coming, and staff time maybe, because there is a cost. Believe me, there is a cost. We got one bus this year. And if you're talking about reducing it, 0.2 or point, whatever, there will be more buses necessary to do these routes. Thank you.
I know that the Secretary Treasurer wanted to respond as well. So would you like to respond to?
Yeah, I just wanted to respond to Trustee Todd's comment about why it's being brought here and when it's a policy discussion. Policy committee cannot dictate the workload of staff, and it also has budgetary implications or potential, which is not appropriate for the policy committee. That's why it's brought before the board.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments, David Todd. And now to Tony Ward, please.
Okay, thank you very much through the chair to Trustee Wilson. Just with respect to the numbers that you have chosen, I just wanted to know how did you arrive at them, and furthermore, I do want to echo both comments for it. I understand it has been a significant concern to the public and will continue to be, regardless of the number that we land on. And obviously, we have to economize. We have to trade-offs. So I want to respect what you said. Trustee Toddy articulated some of my concerns very, very well. But back to the numbers, just how did you arrive at them, please? Thank you.
Great. So I looked at districts that I felt were similar to our district with having a large landmass without transit. So yes, Surrey and Victoria have higher walk limits and a lot of transit that basically reaches most of their areas. So I looked at like Abbey or Chilliwack that have large farming areas like DW Poppy. Obviously, there's no transit there. So I tried to compare to areas where I felt were similar to us and that had less transit available.
Okay, thank you for your comments. I'd like to go to Shelley Coburn at this point. Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Wilson, I have a comment. You did, and a question actually. You pointed out that, roads are really not in our jurisdiction. We don't do highways or sidewalks or roads or that kind of stuff. That's not our job. We would do it if we had the money for it. We'd do it well. So that always leaves me to how do we collaborate with other levels of government to address some of the problems that are impacting a lot of the safety issues around walk limits. And then there's the issue of the actual walk limits when you account for safe roads and sidewalks and all that good stuff. Once you filter that out, yeah, there's some pretty large walk limits, and I do appreciate the lack of transit in particular areas. So my question to you, because you're essentially looking for feasibility or you're just looking for an amount, I'm just wondering if there's a reason why it has to be by June as opposed to, say, September, where, we have less students and we have less pressures on our staff to the full operations of the school district aren't happening through the summer, which, when you talk about people's time and link it strictly to money, that's not the only part of the equation. The equation is burnout, the equation is time, the equation is all of these things, and those add up to a different type of cost, which is like emotional and social and all that other good stuff. So I was wondering if there's a real good reason why it has to be June and not September, because if it's June, I'm less inclined to support just because of what everybody has been through in the last 2 years, and that summer is a little bit more breathing room, and maybe we'll give them a little more time, because my opposition to it is the workload on staff. They've been through a lot. I'm not opposed to the idea of looking at it, and then of course lobbying different governments for the money we need to pull this off. My concern is the timeline, given everything that staff has been through. So.
Great, I would love to answer that, and I probably won't sound very intelligent with this, but I worried that with the election, the September meeting, I wasn't sure how that would go, and I meant to look into that. So if we would meet at the end of September, and then staff I knew would be busy with busing at the beginning of September because they're swamped. So I just didn't know if that was a timely time to meet, but I'm willing to have an amendment and have September come if we are meeting regularly in September.
Okay, Secretary Treasurer would like to speak to this before I bring any motions to the table. Go ahead.
I did speak to the staff that would have to be preparing this, and it is a monumental undertaking for them to do this. There's no way they could actually get it done by June. It's more like a 5 or 6 month process, and we would probably have to bring on temporary staff to be able to do this. It's quite a manual, hands-on process to be able to give you the number that you're looking for. This is not a small assignment to give staff. So September, maybe, but that might even still be pushing it, because as you mentioned, Trustee Wilson, for transportation, the busiest time is July, August, and September, because they're getting the routes done for this upcoming school year. So September would be one that we could try for, but that might even be pushing it with staff, and that would be depending on us to be able to get term people to come in and help us. I couldn't, in talking to them today, I couldn't even guarantee September at this point. It's a huge workload for those 2 staff members specifically.
Okay, there's others that would like to speak to it. So why don't I have everyone speak to it first? Go ahead, would you like to, Suzanne?
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Trustee Wilson, for this motion. I support it because I see the value in it. And however, I was coming in to talk about the timeline, because the timeline is it's very tight. And so having prior discussions over the last 3 years, we talked about the size of the task, and the task is quite significant, given on top of the pressures that we have been walking through. And so I am in absolute favor of analyzing this, because I think it's important. We have families that don't have the ability to drive their children because of the conversation we're having about land acquisition and cost of living. It's insurmountable for most of us. And so it's impacting families and how we're getting our kids to school safely, and how is that affecting their wellness and well-being. So it's a worthwhile conversation, but I do think even if this board doesn't get to see the outcome of it due to elections, I think in terms of keeping kids first, it's important that we make sure we're mindful of how we care for our staff and timelines, and ensuring that we're supporting them to support the vision of keeping kids first. In that heart, I would encourage us to look at an extended timeline on your motion, even pushing into October, November if necessary, in the best interest of this district.
And I'd like to jump in at this point. Oh, Charlie Fox, did you want to jump in? No, you go ahead, and I'll finish.
Thank you, and thank you, Trustee Wilson, for bringing this up. I think it's the information would be valuable, and I appreciate the comments of my colleagues here. I haven't been on the board as long as my other colleagues are here, but I know, for instance, that when we have had an issue associated with a busing situation with a family, my understanding is that we've, and this may be directed directly to the superintendent, Gil, that we have actually accommodated the majority of issues with courtesy busing. Is that correct in that? Am I correct in that conclusion?
So not sure if I see Assistant Superintendent Mouino here, but he's the one who's been working directly with our busing, but he's presenting at a different at a school, Poppy, this evening. But a couple of things. Certainly, this year when we've had issues that, as described by Trustee Perot, where parents have made connections with us and saying that they have an inability to get their students to school, we've worked tirelessly to ensure that we can get to make sure that there isn't an obstacle for students to get to school. So we have accommodated, if we've had to, in those kinds of extenuating situations, even change routes to support. We don't, it's not something obviously we can do for every child. It's not something we do in every situation, but certainly in most situations we try to accommodate the families when asked.
So, thank you. So, I mean, we have, as a district, I feel, gone out of our way to try and accommodate issues that do arise, which I think is part of our trying to deal with families and support students. I too am concerned about what the timing issue and the staff workload issue. I feel this is a very condensed request of staff at a time when I know they're right in school-based budgeting. We're right in preparing our own budget. I know we had a budget meeting recently and we're a bit behind on that. Plus everything else that's going on. I feel that definitely this is a crunch time and this would add a significant workload. The other piece is, and I think Trustee Todd, you alluded to it, what are the budget implications and what could potentially be seen as the next steps? Is there an expectation that this particular motion creates that might be a false expectation? And I don't want to give people an idea that, oh, this is what's coming down the pipe, even though it says it's just information to be brought to the board, but there might be an expectation that there will be significant changes. And this could be costly in terms of what the outcome is and the expected outcome is financially. So those are my comments. Thank you.
And I wanted to add my 2 cents to it as well. I'm very concerned about going down this road. I think we're setting up our public with an expectation that we can't ever supply. There's just no money. I mean, really, there is no money. We're going to Metro, and it's going to cost us a lot of money to deal with contracts when we move to Metro. And, you know, where's that money going to come from? And I just think we're wasting people's times. Mr. Azili has said that is going to I just really think that this is not prudent for us to go down this road. And I really hope that we will not support this in any way, shape, or form. We cannot set an expectation that this would even possibly be an option for us. There just isn't the cash to do it. The ministry is saying, hey, you got to bring money to the table when you want to build a new school. And we know that's going to be every time. It's going to be, we're going to have to look at our own operations money to build schools. That's a very real possibility for us. And so I don't think that this is prudent for us to go down in any way, shape, or form. All right. Did you want to have a motion to change your motion? Go ahead then. Go ahead.
Yeah, so maybe if the public sees how much money it costs too, maybe we would not be asked anymore. I think discovering how much money is quite important, and if the public understood how much money we're expected to put out. So I think it could be a valuable learning exercise. I'm curious about the October public meeting because there is an election, but if it was possible in October, I would offer a friendly amendment that we put your motion forward with a return date of October. If no, is November your swearing in? Given that it's an election year, which is unfortunate for you wanting your report back, but in order to even get the motion going, we do have to move the date and it's an election year. So December, I would offer a friendly amendment that we would have it done, and that we would have that information back in December for whichever board is sitting at this table, because there's no guarantee that we're all coming back. I'm not. So it won't matter for me. Okay.
That would say. Here's all the line. From 3.2 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4.8 kilometers for students in grades 8 to 12 to 3 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4 km for students in grades 8 to 12 to be brought back to the board by December 2022. All right, very good. We have a mover and a seconder for that, and so no more discussion. Would you like to? Go ahead. On the amendment, yes, on the amendment only.
Okay, thank you, thank you. My comments, Chair, well, to anybody, it's getting late. My concern is I can envision this being a massive undertaking as well, and we're not, when we say massive, like 22,000 students, 43 sites, just figuring out basically plotting each one of those students on like I can envision this kind of massive Excel spreadsheet and everything. I do support the idea of doing a transportation analysis. My amendment to your amendment would be something along the lines of 2023. Like that's how I would see it. I think this is a long-term thing that definitely we need a number so that we can offer. So this is where I would disagree with the chair as far as part of it. I agree with the idea this is a massive undertaking. If we give any sense to the public that this is where we are going to go down. So I hear your apprehension, and I want to second that. But at the same time, I think we need an analysis at some point, because with data we can offer kind of explanation. But I don't think we should do it this year. Not at all. I think we should, and it's not about postponing it. It's about, this is a really large undertaking given them, because basically you're plotting every single student because you're making available transportation to each and every single one of them. So I do agree with the idea, but I don't think it should happen this year.
To amend the amendment? You may. What month are you looking at?
I would push it off till after spring break of 2023. That's what I would do.
So let's just say April of 2023.
That's what I would do.
Okay, so that is there a seconder for April of 2023? Is there a seconder for that, please? Seconded by Charlie Fox for discussion. Okay. Is there any discussion on the date? Go ahead, David Todd, please.
Thank you for that amendment. I do think it addresses the shortness of time in terms of this. And I do think it's a long-term conversation. And I can understand, once again, the intent, but my concern goes back to just the idea. I'm not sure we need to go down this road when, and I'm not presupposing an outcome here. I know there will be dollars, and we're talking not tens of thousands, but probably hundreds of thousands of dollars, as well as additional buses. We had approval for one bus this year, and I don't think even by 2023 the financial picture is going to get rosier. I'm a teacher. Every dollar spent in transportation is one less dollar spent in the classroom, in the school. And I always take it back to that. Where are our dollars spent? Resources. And I know some districts, because the provincial government did give money a few years ago, then they scaled it back. Maple Ridge canceled all transportation for 2 years. And I did in my opening. Thank you.
All right. So right now we have any other discussion? Anyone else want a discussion on moving it to April 2023? Shelley Cooper.
I'm reluctant to push it that far, just because but I don't think it's going to change the outcome. And so it's the outcome that I'm after. And I think it's important for the government to see that we have one bus and we have this problem. Also, I hear a lot of every dollar that's not spent is, or on transportation is not spent in the classroom. That is a lot of privilege. That some people can't get to the classroom to even have that dollar spent on them. So I just want to make sure my colleagues at the table understand that for some of us, what's driving this is an equity piece. And that for some kids, they don't get to the classroom to enjoy the dollars that are spent in the classroom. So I will support the amendment if it's going to pass the motion. Just think pushing it off too far is just postponing the inevitable, which is a large number that we'll have to take to the provincial government in the end.
Discussion on this. So I'm going to call the question on the amendment of the amendment. So we're looking at the April 2023 date. Would you like me to read out the entire motion, or is it clear to the trustees as to what we're voting on? All right. Be it resolved that the Langley Board of Education directs staff to investigate the cost of changing the walk limits in Policy 18 student transportation from 3.2 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4.8 kilometers for students in grades 8 to 12 to 3 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4 kilometers for students in grades 8 to 12 to be brought back to the board by April 2023 regular meeting. That is the motion. I'm going to ask those that are in favor of that first. All those in favor? Okay, the motion carries. Now the amendment carries. Okay. So now I'm going to read out the new motion as amended. Be it resolved that the Langley Board of Education directs staff to investigate the cost of changing the walk limits in Policy 18 student transportation from 3.2 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4.8 kilometers for students in grades 8 to 12 to 3 kilometers for students in grades K to 7 and 4 kilometers for students in grades 8 to 12 to be brought back to the board by the April 2023 regular meeting. All those in favor of that motion? It's carried. Those against? And it's carried. Thank you very much. All right. So on to your second motion for tonight, please. Do you want to read it out? Go ahead.
I got caught up there.
Yeah.
So happy. Okay, my second motion. Is my thing on? I think it is. Okay, be it resolved that the Langley Board of Education write a letter to the Ministry of Education requesting increased funding for more counselors and mental health supports.
Right over it.
Thank you very much. Okay, can I? Okay, sorry. I had a long rationale with stats and facts, but I feel that everything that needs to be said about this motion has been said countless times already. We are in a mental health crisis. We were in one before COVID and it has only gotten worse. Districts cannot deal with this on our own. We need help and lots of it. We need several more counselors in our district to even begin to start helping our students in the way that they deserve. So please support this motion.
You have a comment?
No.
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead. Tell me what your comment.
Okay, this is going to be through the chair to Trustee Wilson. This is going to be, you guys have heard my take on this. I would probably support this. But as far as when we're doing, initially we come on as new trustees and looking at just motions that are just to take a stand and the utility of those, and we're warned on those. And so my question would be what is the utility, even though I've heard it addressed before, and we should be advocates for our students to the provincial government, and maybe we'll catch their ear. But really, what's the utility on just, we send a lot of letters. Does it actually make a difference? So if it does, as I've said before, I'm all in favor. And what's the harm, right?
Do you want to respond to that?
Oh,
Sorry,
sorry, I didn't know you
were,
There was
I
a
didn't know you
question
were
there
asking me.
Sorry.
I think that we need to continually pound at that door and ask for money every single time until the problem is addressed. I get that it seems just like a token thing we do, but it's really our role as advocates to get that money. It's just something that I believe that until we see it, we can't stop asking for it. So that's just my short answer.
Thank you very much. I'll go down to, oh, I've got my list here. Okay, so I've got Coburn, Fox, and Perot in that order. Go ahead.
So yeah, to answer your question, not only to Trustee Wilson's point, is it like that's our job. Also, so a little thing about politicians, they like votes, Tony. And for the provincial government, if enough districts come knocking, because it's a real problem, then they're going to panic a little and say, oh, maybe we need to deal with this and make this a priority because it might impact our ability to be reelected. Because that's what politicians like mostly, is to be reelected. And so I would encourage every other district in the province to continue to write these letters as well, because then if it's coming from multiple boards and multiple districts, they will know that it will impact their standing throughout the province. So the more unified you are on your issue, and this is a provincial issue, I would say it's a global issue, the more they're going to pay attention. So if Langley doesn't write their letter or these other places don't, then they're going to be like, oh, it's just this one little squeaky wheel. But if we all make a big noise, they'll be like, this might cost us, and then we'll get some action. That's just my cynicism.
Thank you, Trustee Coburn. Trustee Fox, you're next, and then Trustee Perot.
I think our role is as advocates for, this is about students. This is about support for students. This is about making education happen for students. So I think it's really critical that we as an elected body do advocate. I also think that it is a bit of a gauge. Are we the only one? As Trustee Coburn stated, are we the only ones that are concerned about this? I don't believe that. I think that this weekend at the BCSTA convention, you're going to find a lot of districts have similar concerns about the mental health of our system. And I say system, not only students, but our staff and so on. And I think that we need more counselors as a solution, but there may be other solutions, and the ministry has to listen to us. And as an organization, I think the BCSTA has to again become a combined advocate for this. So I fully support this. I think it's a great motion, and that I hope that, unfortunately, I won't be there this weekend, but I hope that you people hear this message from all sorts of districts as you gather.
Thank you, Trustee Fox. Trustee Perot, go ahead.
Well, I'm going to come from a very biased position as a counselor. I'm going to come from a biased position as a provincial and national advocate for child wellness. Last year, motion 15 went provincial because of advocacy. It went provincial to every district and succeeded as amended, but it succeeded. And it succeeded because letters were written. We cannot minimize the power and the influence of what we have, what feels like the township of Langley and the city of Langley. We cannot minimize our voice. We're here specifically and only for the heart of the child. That's it. It's the only reason why we exist as a district and as a board. It's the only reason why I do what I do. For us not to step up to the plate and pick up the bat and try to hit that ball as hard as we can so we can support every teacher out there, to support our children who are coming into the schools broken, traumatized, vulnerable, then motion 15 is pointless, because we might as well have the agreement of seclusion and isolation rooms and working with restraint if we're going to avoid mental health. We must make mental health an absolute priority. We must pick up our microphones and call out. It works. I know it works. I've been doing it for a very long time and been seeing success. Slow as it is, fast as we can go. We must do it. It's not an option. It's non-negotiable. And it's not a question. And we should never minimize the power of what will be written on that paper when Trustee Ross is approved to write that letter, and how we will support this man sitting beside us to formulate budgets, to hire incredible educators to come in and support our students and one another. That is why it's important. On a weekly basis, I see parents of children with disabilities wrestling and sinking, especially right now with mental health issues, trying to find solutions how to support them, to support their children, to support their the staff in their respective districts, to support their children. We cannot let this conversation rest. With that being said, that is the foundation of why we do what we do. So I support Trustee Wilson's motion wholeheartedly with that response.
Thank you, Trustee Pearl. And I know David Todd, you had a further comment you wanted to make at this point.
Thank you. Thank you, Trustee Wilson, for bringing this as forward. I totally agree. We're advocates for children. We do this. We write letters. We make the Minister of Education aware. You saw in our package today, earlier, that we actually do get responses from the minister from time to time to our letters, and she writes, you know, what they've done. I remember a long time ago, just over 2 years ago, I was sitting in a virtual briefing about the pandemic and potential stuff, and we had a Q&A with, I believe her name's Rika Gustafson. She's the health officer for our area, and I'm not brilliant at all, but I asked her, I tried to say, okay, my concern is mental health at that time. I said, what are you doing? Yeah, I know you've got all these other things you're looking at, but what about mental health? And in about 3 months after that, fast forward, they did a limited initiative announced by the Department of Education that mental health was going to be an ongoing concern during the pandemic. Today, just as much as yesterday, just as before the pandemic, we need to address this issue. And we've made very tentative steps around this. But in terms of school support, 100%, I have no problem. And it is an issue in our schools. It's an issue in our population. It's an issue in our community. So no problem, support this 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I don't think there's anything else. Do you want to close with any comments, or is it okay? Okay, thank you. All those in favor of the motion? It carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Okay. On to trustee comments. It's getting late, folks. It's 9:30, so can you keep them brief for the public? And let's start with this side, and we'll just go down this way. So start out with you, Trustee Todd, please.
Thank you. And as you see, not always do we agree on everything, but there's always a motive of respect and care at this table. I did want to talk about one of my pet projects. I'm on the Parks and Rec Committee, and I did want to throw this out there right now in the township that kind of circles back to mental health and wellness. Unfortunately, a few years ago, we had a very unfortunate incident in our community in Walnut Grove. And my question at the time was, you know, the kids are outside these community centers, and my concern is, why aren't they on the inside? Why aren't they using our facility? And this year, the Township of Langley is proud to announce, as of the end of school, till the beginning of September, there's going to be a $20 rec pass. And any student aged 13 to 18 is going to be eligible for this rec pass. And it includes everything. I think it even includes several dates at the Aldergrove Credit Union pool. So I go, that's awesome. And it's based on the model from Delta.
That's the Otter Co-op.
Oh, sorry. The Otter Co-op. Yeah, so to me, that's exciting news for the youth of in the township, $20 pass. And that's coming up this summer. It was, of course, it got waylaid by the pandemic, but it is for the youth going forward. This weekend, as a preface before, most of us are going to the BCSTA, and again, motions get passed there. There'll be a conversation around mental health, and there will be a conversation around counselors and how we're gonna put things back together again and work smarter in the future. I appreciate, it's great to have a public to speak to here, not a screen, and I'm not keeping my dog away from me or settling things upstairs. That's wonderful, and good night.
Go ahead, Trustee Fox, please.
Thank you. Sorry, I had to give you a rough time there. You understand. Anyway, thank you very much. And thank you very much. It's nice to see people live. As Trustee Todd said, yes, there's faces out there. There's not a screen. It's great. It was lonely here for a while, but it's nice to see fresh faces. I want to just mention a couple things. I wanted to thank our staff. We sent out a survey and we got, what, 2,100 plus responses to our survey. And Joe and Abshar and her crew, thank you very much. They collated it very quickly. And the results are certainly, I think, stand good stead for the communication and for the feedback that we got from that. So thanks to our staff. We talk about things back, Superintendent Gill, back to normal. I spent a lot of days at the LEC watching boys and girls basketball, and I can tell you two things about that. First of all, the pride that the facilities in our community, and the second was watching some very high talented basketball players who were excited to be back on the court, excited to play in front of fans, and I just felt the energy there really started to break that COVID piece down. So thank you.
To Trustee Pro, please.
Thank you, Chair Ross. Well, part of my comments, actually, ironically, were to acknowledge my appreciation for ensuring the letter went out to the ministry on barrier-free spaces, because this advocacy is important. And having that voice going forward is critical for our students. And so that was one of the things I wanted to highlight tonight in my comments and extend gratitude for. Also extending gratitude for the opportunity to be present at Vanguard with my fellow trustees and leadership team for the announcement with the Ministry of Education for 42 million, right? For our district, which is a huge celebration point, and being able to attend the Lower Fraser Valley Aboriginal Society opening of the Head Starts program as well. And that was an incredibly humbling experience where it was an opening, but a blessing to our community, our children, the facilities, having to be able to bear witness to the house post that was put up by artist Brandon Gabriel from Kwantlen Nation. Exceptional work from everybody there, and it was such a fabulous way to come back. That was my first actual gathering with anybody, and it was pretty powerful. And I also wanted to thank the LTA for acknowledging the and presenting to us for the Day of Mourning. It's so important that we're taking pause for that, and so I want to thank you for that as well. And for everybody who's here with us tonight, bearing through, and our colleagues, good night.
Thank you. I'll save my comments for last. Go ahead, Trustee Marty Wilson, please.
Great, thank you. I want to thank staff for all the work they do, setting this up, for staying late, our partner groups for coming and staying late. Although I love seeing everybody's faces, I know for you guys, when you could have been in your pajamas and cooking dinner or having a beverage, it was probably a little nicer at home. But thanks for coming out and staying with us. And wow, 2 motions passed. Like, this is my best day, you guys. So, okay, on to something a little more somber. Thank you to the LTA for presenting today. And I just want to recognize that the day of mourning for workers killed and injured April 29th, and recognize that organized labor has worked and continues to work tirelessly on safety in the workplace. So for that, I am truly grateful. On to happier news. I was invited to the Ramadan celebrations at LSS. And I love seeing on social media all the celebrations that are going on in our different schools in the district. I just love it. I think it's amazing. I'm also just happy when I'm out in the community to see parents getting to come to community events, getting to watch their children play sports, getting to see theater productions. It's pretty amazing. I hope that through, this slow coming out process that we can return to some sort of normal. So thank you all for coming, and good night.
And now to Trustee Ward.
I'd like to first thank our partner groups. Haven't seen the faces for a while, as was already acknowledged, and also to my fellow trustees and obviously staff, but just for positive, constructive conversation. Like, this is that we talk about the work of the board. The work of the board is the tension between ideas. And so, and sometimes it's just for the public to hear, why we write a letter or something like that, because I addressed that before, although I'm not supposed to talk about that on trustee comments. We can now. We can now. That's right. Yeah. We abandoned that rule. That's right. But it is the tension between ideas, and robust conversation leads to analysis, right? And better data, better understanding, and sometimes we can move on issues and ideas. So I just want to thank my colleagues for good discussion. Thank you.
Hey everyone, so good to see you. I'm sad that I had to put on clothes for my meeting. So I'm going to start. I have 2 things I want to end with, but I will start by saying, I don't know if you all know what this is. It's a Lifeguard Digital Health. And what it is a life-saving app that anybody can put on their phone. And it sets a timer. And so if you ever use any substance, when you go to use, the timer will go off in 5 minutes. And if you don't respond immediately, ambulance, first responder comes. They already know what they're coming for. They have your address because of the GPS. You don't have to go through BC Ambulance. You don't have to go through ECOM. It filters out other emergencies like cardiac. It knows that this is going to be an overdose, and it has the exact address. The alarm is extremely loud, so if nobody answers this alarm, they know that somebody is in distress. It saves hundreds of thousands of lives around the world. It was invented here in British Columbia by a gentleman who was in a recovery house, and somebody in that house OD'd alone. And so he designed this so that nobody ever died using. And I really like this because a lot of times when people are using, they want to keep it a secret, and especially kids, and they don't want their parents to know. And so as a school district, I think it's really important that we educate our youth to put this on their phone, because there are stories of parents who've had people come to their door and say, hey, you've got an overdose here. And the parents go, no, we don't. And they're saying, yeah. And the kid's on the left side of the bed, because that's how detailed it is. So I just want to take a minute to use what little public influence I have in my voice to say, I highly recommend checking this out. It's in every naloxone kit that gets handed out. It's something that I would hope that many districts consider supporting. So that's what I did this week as I learned about Lifeguard. I would like to say, speaking of Vanguard, it was really nice to see everyone. I had a big cry. I love that school. I just want to say that I'm really proud to be part of a board that sees the value in investing in all children and all families. And this board, or the board before, whatever board, decided that some schools were worth investing in, and we've made a point to do that. And so to see that happen made me feel extremely proud to be part of that. And I'd also like to say that I'm very proud to be on a board that can have public debate at a table and have a resolution, because this board has been unable to do that. And so in the last year of my term, it makes me especially proud to know that we've come so far and that we can do our job and demonstrate to the public that we are rational political actors. And that's all I have to say. I'd like to thank everybody who has worked so hard in the last couple of years. And it is so nice to see everybody's beautiful faces. And I hope everybody has a great night.
Thank you, trustees, for your comments tonight. And my only comments is that I wanted just to tell everyone how much I appreciate the reasonableness of our conversation. We are reasonable people. And so it gives us all great hope for going forward in the future. So thank you for that. It's question period now, and so I just would like to read this out. Question period is provided at board meetings. The purpose is to ensure that those present in the audience have an opportunity to obtain clarification concerning business conducted during the meeting. Priority will be given to responding to one question per person before responding to further questions from any individual. The following will help the public develop questions for question period at a public board meeting that is in keeping with the goal of respectful and focused meeting. Questions: 1, need to be directly to the chair and not to any staff. Need to be related directly to the topic on the agenda. 3, need to be succinct, focused, and not be a statement. May not be asked that are related to personnel or directed at an individual trustee. 5, may not be asked that are related to contract negotiations. And lastly, 6, the questioner shall provide their name so that they can be reflected in the minutes. All of the above directions are policy provided in our policy number 7, board operations. The chair may answer, may defer to staff, or indicate a question may not be in keeping with the above guidelines. The board appreciates the public's interest and wants to ensure a professional meeting is conducted with question period focused on providing guests with the clarification they seek. Trustees also welcome questions from members of the public apart from question period, and their contact information is available on the school district website. The chair will call for questions from the public, and I would just like to leave the podium as open. Does anyone have any questions they have for the board tonight? Okay, I don't see anyone, so we'll move on. I would like to call for adjournment. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Suzanne Perot, and Trustee Todd is the seconder. Thank you. The meeting is now adjourned at 8:40. I need an all in favor of this motion for adjournment. Thank you, Vetch. It is carried unanimously at 9:40. Thank you. There we go.